Hey guys, tonight we begin our journey in the sultry air of an ancient Egyptian morning. The mud brick walls around you are still cool from the night, though the heat is creeping in fast, rising off the packed dirt floor like a sleepy breath. You've woken up on a woven mat laid out carefully by someone who cares about you, or at least, someone who likes their mats neat. The faint scent of crushed lotus petals lingers from yesterday's offerings. Somewhere nearby, a donkey sneezes. Your head, meanwhile, is resting on a small object that can only be described as equal parts furniture and prank. It's hard, it's curved, and it appears to be made of wood. This, somehow, is your pillow. The gods are watching you sleep. But not with mercy, more with academic curiosity. This isn't some fluffed-up down-filled dream maker. It's a headrest, a single piece of carved wood shaped like a bridge. With a curved top cradle and flat base. You shift slightly. You regret it instantly. Your neck is perched like a precious artifact. And it's no wonder your dreams involve balancing pots. And here's your reality check. You probably won't survive this place. Between the heat, the crocodiles, and the whole, we don't believe in soft sleeping, situation. You're unlikely to make it past brunch without questioning every modern luxury you've taken for granted, mattresses. For example. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing our sleepy little history community from all over the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the shifting pink light coming through a linen curtain. Dust dances lazily in the beams, swirling like golden smoke. Outside, a rooster is already halfway through his morning monologue. Inside, you stretch, carefully, because you slept with your neck resting on a small, polished chunk of wood. Welcome to 1300 BCE. Your host family, you're temporarily living with a modest artisan's household just south of Thebes, is already up. You can hear someone grinding grain and another rinsing clay jars. You sit up slowly and gently rub your neck, wondering if they've invented chiropractors yet. They haven't. What they have invented, though, are beer breakfasts and eyeliner for everyone. But let's talk about this pillow. Or rather, headrest. Egyptians weren't really aiming for comfort the way you are. Instead, they saw the sleeping body as something to protect and elevate. The head, after all, housed the ka, the spiritual double of a person. Letting it flop onto a mat was practically spiritual negligence. The headrest was typically crafted from wood, stone, or even ivory if you were wealthy, or liked to show off. It propped the head up off the mat, reducing exposure to insects and, more critically, evil spirits. Yes, evil spirits were believed to slither across floors like lazy snakes, which is exactly why you'd never want your sacred noggin down there with them. Historians still argue whether these headrests were originally a practical invention or a spiritual one. Were they designed first to beat the heat? Or were they ceremonial from the start? Either way, they evolved into symbols of protection and status. There's even evidence that people loved these things. Well, tolerated them with affection. Carvings on tomb walls often show individuals lying peacefully on their side, head gently perched on one of these devices. And in some cases, personalized ones were buried with them, inscribed with spells or even their names, like ancient monogrammed memory foam. Only less foamy. A quirky tidbit. Some people added linen wrappings or mini cushions on the top curve. Yes, the ancients invented the pillow for the pillow. An early luxury hack. As you shuffle toward your morning duties, grinding barley, fetching water, pretending not to notice the goat in your sleeping space, you glance back at the headrest. Now glowing in the slanted sunlight. It's not exactly cozy, but here, it's sacred, essential, and possibly your best protection from midnight demons with a grudge. You step outside into the slowly brightening world. The air is still thick with the softness of early day. And already you can feel the heat lining up behind the horizon like a crowd waiting for market stalls to open. A neighbor waves from her roof, where she's chasing a pigeon away from her date palms. Life here starts early, and it starts hard. Meanwhile, back inside your dwelling, your wooden pillow sits silently, curved and stoic like a miniature altar. You can't help but marvel again. Why was something that uncomfortable so beloved for centuries? Let's get to the bottom of it. Egyptian headrests weren't just an accident of poor design, they were, quite literally, on purpose. Unlike your soft, cloud-like modern pillow, these headrests were firm, curved bridges made of wood, alabaster, faience, or even precious metals. They were typically about 6 inches tall, with a flat base and a cradle-shaped top meant to support the neck. And yes, the goal was not softness, it was elevation. Lifting the head kept it cool during scorching Egyptian nights. And most importantly, kept it away from floor-bound insects like ants, scorpions, or the ever-popular cobra. When your gods wear cobras on their crowns, you take pest management seriously. The design had airflow in mind. Sleeping flat on a hot floor was a recipe for sweat-drenched dreams. But a raised head, perched with careful geometry, could breathe a bit, allowing breezes, however minimal, to pass under and around. Think of it as ancient ergonomic engineering. You weren't sinking into a pillow, you were rising above the dust. Even more curious, these headrests often varied by social class and region. Wealthier citizens had theirs decorated with detailed carvings, images of gods, spells for protection, or even floral motifs. Some resembled miniature thrones, others bore inscriptions invoking deities like bees, the protective dwarf god who was believed to guard sleepers against nightmares. You might not be sleeping comfortably, but you were sleeping under the divine watch of a pot-bellied, lion-faced spiritual bodyguard. That's got to count for something. Historians still debate whether the discomfort was even noticed by Egyptians, or if perhaps, shockingly, they found these hard surfaces more restful. One theory suggests that people conditioned from birth to sleep on firm surfaces had entirely different definitions of comfort. You, soft mattress enthusiast, are the anomaly here. And there's something else, symmetry. Many headrests were beautifully symmetrical, with identical curves on each side, allowing them to be flipped for even wear. You had to admire the practicality. Break one side in a sleep-fueled fumble? Just turn it around. Problem solved. A fringe theory, less mainstream, but fascinating, proposes that some headrests were designed to keep elaborate hairstyles intact. Ancient Egyptians were serious about hair. Beeswax, oils, wigs, and braids took hours. You didn't want to ruin that hard work by smooshing your head into linen. A headrest kept your carefully layered hair elevated like a dessert under glass. And yes, they even used these while traveling. Archaeological digs have uncovered small, portable headrests, kind of like the first neck support gadgets. You picture someone at a rest stop, rolling out a mat, unwrapping a mini wooden ark, and settling in like a very tired pharaoh. You return to your household's central courtyard, where breakfast is being laid out: dates, flatbread, and something sour and surprisingly delicious made from fermented grain. You chew thoughtfully, thinking about your neck. It's sore, sure, but in some strange way, you're already adjusting. You glance at the old man across the way, napping upright with his head balanced perfectly on a gleaming stone rest. He's smiling in his sleep. Either he's dreaming about papyrus taxes, or he's cracked the ancient code of neck comfort. Maybe one day you will, too. By the time the midday heat rolls in, the city hums with the kind of quiet busyness only ancient civilizations could perfect. Children scuffle in dusty alleyways. Scribes hunch in the shade of colonnades. The air ripples above black stone streets. And in a quiet corner of the household, someone prepares the sleeping space for the hottest part of the day, the midday rest. You retreat indoors, stepping carefully around a jar of beer fermenting a bit too enthusiastically in the corner. The temperature inside is still tolerable. The headrest is already waiting for you, silent, unmoved, and as always, slightly accusatory in its geometry. You settle down again on your woven mat, lifting your head and placing it gently on the curved wooden ark. The heat clings to your arms, but you can already feel the wisdom of the design. The back of your neck remains open to the faint breeze drifting through the open slits in the wall. It's not exactly air conditioning, but by ancient standards, it's an architectural miracle. This, you realize, was one of the primary reasons these pillow-shaped wooden contraptions lasted so long in Egypt's design history. They worked, not for comfort, but for climate control. Egypt is hot, no surprise there, but it's not just the heat that causes trouble, it's the lack of nighttime cooling. The thick mud brick walls do their best, but by evening, The earth seems to hold the warmth like a dragon with a belly full of embers. And when night finally creeps in, the air goes still, dead still, which is where the headrest comes in. Lifting your head off the mat allows even the faintest breath of air to circulate around your ears and neck. In a world without ceiling fans, this is a major win. It's practical, it's intentional, and, odd as it seems, it's brilliant. There's even a passage in an ancient letter, scribbled in a blend of hieratic script, that hints at this cooling function. The head, raised above the ground, feels the night winds of the gods. Was it metaphorical? Maybe, but we like to imagine some weary poet lying on a mat, sighing with relief as his neck finally cooled under the arc of a carved acacia headrest. Historians still argue about which materials were best suited to promote this effect. Stone versions retained heat longer, possibly counterproductive, while wood cooled faster but required frequent smoothing to avoid splinters. Either way, the evolution of the design shows constant refinement. These weren't just random blocks. They were sculpted, adjusted, sometimes even hollowed for airflow. And for those with deeper pockets, like merchants or royal court aides, headrests could come with leather-wrapped tops or soft cloth linings tied around the cradle. The ancient equivalent of a cooling gel insert. Stylish and functional. A quirky practice that's been unearthed, literally, involves placing small ceramic jars of scented water under or near the headrest. The heat would warm the water, releasing gentle floral vapors during the night. A built-in aromatherapy diffuser. Egyptian edition. You shift again, finding a slightly better angle on your neck. Not good, just better. There's no perfect position, only less pointy. Outside, the city simmers. The Nile glistens in the distance, bending like a half-asleep cobra. But here, in your little mud brick sanctuary, you find yourself drifting off, not from softness, but from a kind of surrender. You're adapting, or maybe, the headrest is training you. Your dreams come slowly, like boats drifting toward a harbor. You're floating down a quiet canal. Papyrus brushes your hands. Someone hands you a slice of date cake. You can't move your neck. But it doesn't matter. You're cool. You're calm. You're becoming Egyptian. The afternoon heat rolls on like a slow-moving ox cart, and time itself seems to sweat. The city begins to quiet again, not from rest, but from resignation. People retreat into shade, into water, into any trick the centuries have offered for surviving the sun. You, however, are out on an errand with a local apprentice, carrying a bundle of linen across town to a painter's workshop. As you walk through narrow alleys and past stalls selling cumin, honey, and dried fish that smells exactly like it sounds, you start noticing something. Everyone has a headrest. Not just the elite, not just the scribes, everyone. In one doorway, a servant dozes with his head tilted sideways on a simple clay rest. In another, a young girl naps against a palm wood cradle engraved with crude cat shapes. Even a street dog is curled beside a fallen piece of carved stone shaped suspiciously like a half-broken pillow. These headrests aren't just furniture. They're part of the culture, woven into the daily rhythm of the Nile like grain into bread. By now, you've seen several variations of the design. Some are clean and plain. Others are intricately carved with lotus blossoms, ankhs, or stylized human eyes. And the materials? Not just wood and stone anymore. One pillow back at the workshop is made of faience, glazed and shimmering like it was stolen from a scarab's jewelry box. Historians still argue whether these decorations were purely aesthetic or had magical functions. Were the lotus petals just floral flair, or were they meant to ward off bad dreams? The line between practicality and symbolism was thinner than a scribe's reed pen. You ask your apprentice companion. His name is Jati. And he's wearing sandals made from something that looks suspiciously like bark, if he has a favorite type. He grins and says, "My mother makes cloth wraps for them. If you don't like the feel, you add linen. It's like layering bread under your head." You pass a cluster of priests haggling over incense prices. One of them is tucking a travel headrest into his satchel, just beside a dried fish and a tiny bronze statue of Thoth. Traveling comfort priorities. Sacred bird man god. Pickled protein. Neck support. Back at the painter's courtyard, your bundle of linen is traded for a newly lacquered scene. Osiris judging the dead with his famous feather. You can't help but notice, nestled in the corner of the painting, is a tiny headrest placed beside the weighing scales. Even in depictions of the afterlife, they didn't forget the essentials. And speaking of essentials, you're invited to sit and rest before the walk home. A girl brings you a cup of hibiscus water. You thank her, and to your mild horror, and now, secret anticipation, she places a guest headrest at your feet. This one is made of sycamore wood. A little rough but surprisingly cool to the touch. You lay down gently, sip the hibiscus, and realize you're slowly learning how to surrender to the strange precision of this culture's idea of sleep. A quirky bit? Some headrests were painted with faces, joyful, peaceful, even mischievous expressions staring up at the ceiling while their owners slept. As if to remind sleepers that even in discomfort, a little humor belonged. Or maybe it was just to keep the gods entertained during overnight check-ins. You rise slowly, neck creaking just a little less than before. You thank your hosts and head back through the winding streets. By now, the sun's descending, spilling gold across the Nile like some careless painter dropped their palette in the water. As you near home, you spot your own humble headrest resting on your mat, exactly where you left it. The light catches its curve, casting a crescent shadow, and for the first time, you think, it doesn't look that bad. By the time evening sets in, everything seems wrapped in copper. The light leans lower, shadows stretch longer, and the air holds its breath as if unsure whether it should finally cool down or commit to being hot forever. Back in your small room, you kneel beside your mat again. Someone has smoothed the woven reeds and fluffed your linen cloth, such luxury, and your wooden headrest stands at attention like a tiny sentinel of the sleep realm. Tonight, though, you're doing something a little different. You're trying the full bedtime ritual. Because in ancient Egypt, sleep wasn't just the passive result of fatigue, it was a nightly ceremony. A transition, a transformation. First comes the cleansing. You wash your hands and feet with a cooled trickle from a ceramic jar. Scented faintly with crushed blue lotus. The water has been warming all day in the sun, but now it feels gentle, like a whisper on your skin. Next, the oil. A few drops of sweet almond rubbed into the neck and temples, not just for comfort, but to ward off the spirits that might fancy a stroll through your dreams. Egyptian culture was rich with beliefs about the power of sleep. Your dreams weren't random, they were messages. Sleep wasn't unconsciousness, it was a voyage. And no voyage begins without proper preparation. You reach for the amulet someone loaned you earlier in the day, a small turquoise bee's figure. Rounded belly and fierce, grinning face. He's one of Egypt's most curious gods, short, scruffy, tongue out, and often depicted banging a drum or dancing awkwardly. But Bees was more than comic relief, he was the protector of sleep. Children, and homes. People placed Bees' amulets beside their beds, wore him as jewelry, even painted him on headrests. Because while sleep offered a glimpse into the divine, it also cracked open the door to chaos. Bees stood at that door, squat and fearless, brandishing a rattle and ready to shoo nightmares away like flies from a fig. You whisper a half-prayer you learned earlier from a neighbor. Bees, drum loudly tonight, scare off the things with too many teeth. It's unclear whether that's poetic or literal, but it seems wise to cover all your bases. You lie down again, lining your neck up with care. You've been taught the trick, shoulders relaxed, head tipped ever so slightly, spine long as a reed. It's not comfortable in the modern sense, but it feels correct, like your body is being aligned with the Nile itself, straight, flowing, enduring. Historians still argue about whether these rituals were truly widespread or more common among priests and elite households. Some tomb paintings show even modest farmers placing amulets near their mats. Others suggest this may have been more aspirational, art reflecting ideals, not reality. A quirky find. In one tomb, archaeologists discovered a child-sized headrest carved to resemble two stacked turtles. Was it symbolic? Was it a toy? Was it, as one scholar half-joked, the ancient Egyptian version of a teddy bear? We may never know, but the detail is telling. Sleep mattered, even for children, even when comfort came shaped like reptiles. Tonight, you settle in with all of this in mind. You've got your headrest, your oils, your little guardian figurine. The clay walls around you glow orange, then cool to purple, then drift into blue. Crickets begin to click. A dog barks twice, then thinks better of it. And slowly, your breath evens out. The wooden arc beneath your neck no longer feels like punishment. It feels like tradition, like continuity, like thousands of others before you have taken this exact posture and drifted into dreams filled with floating gods and blooming lotuses. Maybe tonight, you'll meet them too. The night deepens, and the household settles into a soft, ritualized silence. You hear the faint rhythm of someone whispering prayers in the next room. Murmured words tumbling like pebbles in the dark. A clay lamp flickers near your feet, casting lopsided shadows that stretch like painted reeds across the floor. And under your neck, still, unwavering, is that strangely faithful wooden pillow. You shift just slightly, and though it's as firm as ever, it no longer feels like an intruder. It feels like a companion. Unforgiving, sure, but reliable. Tonight, you begin to wonder, did mummies sleep on these? The answer, somewhat unsettlingly, is yes. In ancient Egyptian burial practices, the headrest followed you beyond the mortal world. It wasn't just a tool for the living, it was also an essential part of your eternal rest kit. Archaeologists have found hundreds of headrests inside tombs, nestled carefully under skulls or placed reverently beside sarcophagi, like the final punctuation mark in a very quiet sentence. Some were made from stone, others gilded or painted with protective spells. They weren't just meant to support the body. They were symbols of spiritual resurrection, lifting the head so the soul could rise again. Reborn with the sun god Ra. One particularly exquisite example, discovered in the tomb of Tutankhamun, was carved from ivory and engraved with the protective figure of Shu, the god of air, holding up the arch with his outstretched arms. It was less, get comfy, and more, let the cosmos carry you. Historians still argue whether these funerary headrests were used during life or made specifically for the afterlife. Were they broken in by years of human dreams? Or were they pristine relics crafted just for burial? The lack of wear on some suggests the latter, like buying a brand new mattress for your tomb. Dark, but undeniably considerate. A fringe belief, though not universally accepted, suggests that some spells carved into these headrests were dream triggers. That's right. Ancient Egyptian lucid dreaming accessories. Inscriptions would invoke gods or ancestors, asking them to send visions during sleep. Whether this worked or not, we can't say, but the intention is remarkable. Imagine sleeping on an object that doubles as a hotline to the divine. Back in your dim room, your own headrest bears no inscription. It's humble, slightly chipped at the corner, and smells faintly of desert air and years of use. But it's doing its job. Your neck is elevated, your ears stay cool, your spiritual double, drifts free in search of something interesting to report back by morning. You dream, briefly, of crocodiles reciting poetry. One has a scroll tucked under its arm. You try to ask if the verse rhymes, but it replies only with a yawn that reveals far too many teeth. The dream shifts. You're floating above fields of blue lotus, and someone nearby is painting your shadow onto papyrus. When you wake, if that's even what this in-between state is, the moonlight has shifted. You sit up slowly, careful not to tip the pillow from its perch. The room is unchanged, but your perception isn't. There's something about knowing that what you just used to support your head has also supported thousands of others, not just in life, but in death. It's humbling, a little eerie, but also oddly comforting. You lie back down again, arms at your side, the wooden arc catching your neck in its smooth, shallow cradle. A soft breeze threads its way through the wall slits, nudging the clay lamp's flame. And once again, sleep arrives, not with softness, but with intention. Morning returns, gently at first, like it's trying not to wake the gods. A reed flute plays somewhere in the distance, likely a neighbor's child showing off before breakfast. The scent of baking barley bread drifts through the open window, warm and vaguely sweet, like earth toasted just right. You blink at the ceiling. Your head is still perched on your wooden pillow. Your neck, somehow, is not angry at you. Progress. But today, you're headed somewhere special. The home of a local artisan who makes headrests for the nobility. You follow your guide through the winding streets of the city. Donkeys and carts pass. Someone's dropped a pot of lentils and is shouting about it like it's the end of civilization. You step over a sleeping cat stretched luxuriously across the threshold of a perfume stall. Eventually, you arrive at a workshop tucked behind a colonnaded courtyard. The air here smells of sawdust, oil, and damp linen. Inside, dozens of headrests rest in neat rows, some simple, some elaborate, some outright ridiculous. One looks like a pair of lion paws holding up a tiny bed. Another appears to be shaped like a lounging hippo. Art or insult? Hard to tell. The artisan himself, a man named Mena, is smoothing the curve of a new design with an obsidian blade. He doesn't look up as you enter. Don't sit on anything, he says, flatly. They're not chairs. Mena is a craftsman of high regard. His headrests have graced the necks of priests, scribes, nobles, and, according to him, one man who claimed to be the reincarnation of Osiris and then fell asleep face first in a melon cart. You wander the space, marveling at the variety. Some are carved from imported ebony, polished to a glassy sheen. Others are made of local sycamore, lighter and more fragrant. Several are inlaid with slivers of ivory, forming patterns of lotus flowers, solar discs, and the ever-watchful eye of Horus. Gold ones are popular, Mena mutters, but terrible in summer. They cook the neck. Historians still argue whether materials were chosen for religious significance or simple durability. Was sycamore sacred, or just plentiful? Did ivory imply holiness, or just wealth? The truth is probably both. Like so much in ancient Egypt, function and faith weren't separate, they were braided like palm fibers. A fringe theory claims that high-ranking officials had different headrests for each day of the week. Each one inscribed with specific protective spells tailored to different dangers. Monday, evil spirits. Tuesday, bad dreams. Wednesday, unexpected nosebleeds. It's oddly specific, but no more so than modern horoscopes. Mena shows you a personal favorite, a headrest commissioned by a retired scribe who requested tiny hieroglyphs of cats chasing mice etched into the underside. He said if he died in his sleep. Mena explains, he wanted to go laughing. You ask if people ever customized their headrests. Of course, he replies. Some add padding, some paint the base. One man added a drawer for sleep herbs. Another kept a dried frog in his. He pauses. I didn't ask why. You linger for a while, running your fingers along the cool, curved tops of the various designs. One in particular catches your eye, simple, elegant, just slightly too tall. Mena notices. That one's yours if you can sleep on it 3 nights in a row without complaining. You consider this. Then you remember your current one, slightly uneven, definitely whispering splinters, and agree to the challenge. You leave the workshop with your new sleeping partner tucked under one arm. The sun glints off its curve like a wink. Tonight, you'll give it a try. And who knows, maybe tomorrow, you'll start carving tiny cats into the underside. 2. That night, your new headrest waits patiently beside your mat like a freshly recruited night watchman. It smells of polished wood and faint incense. Mena must have blessed it with myrrh. You study its graceful arc, its careful balance. If furniture could smirk, this one probably would. You lie down, adjusting your neck gingerly. It's a little taller than your last one. As promised. At first it feels like trying to sleep with your head on the curved edge of a serving tray. But then, you breathe. You settle. You adjust your shoulders. And you realize, it works. Not in a plush, mattress commercial kind of way. No, but in a this might have been designed by a god of breeze and alignment sort of way. And speaking of gods, you start to dream. In your dream, you're in a boat made of reeds, drifting gently down a canal under a ceiling of stars. A figure appears at the prow, robed in blue and gold, holding a crook and flail. It's not frightening, it's just there. Present, calm. You try to speak, but your voice is made of smoke. The boat glides on. This might seem like a quirky side note, but the ancient Egyptians believed that sleep was a journey. Not a shutting down of the mind, but a departure of the soul. You weren't just resting, you were traveling. And your dreams? Those were maps, messages, warnings, occasionally, invitations. Many believed that sleep transported the ba, one part of the soul, out of the body and into other realms, where it could mingle with the dead. Listen to the gods, and even bring back knowledge. But only if the sleeper was careful, clean, and elevated, hence the headrest. Some headrests even bore inscriptions calling on gods to protect the sleeper's soul mid-journey. One famous example reads, "Raise his head, that he may see the light." Not exactly bedtime poetry, but reassuring. In a cosmic way. Historians still debate whether everyone shared these beliefs or if it was limited to priestly and literate circles. Did your average fisherman believe his dreams came from Osiris? Or just from undercooked lentils? Evidence is mixed, but the presence of carved headrests in humble graves suggests the idea had reach. You rolled gently to one side, careful not to knock your ball off its intended flight path, and think about just how seriously they took dreams. Dream interpretation wasn't a fringe practice, it was a profession. Entire scrolls, like the Ramesside dream book, were devoted to decoding common sleep visions. Dreams of crocodiles were good luck. Dreams of eating crocodiles? Even better. And while we're here, yes, there were people who specialized in dream magic. Sleep temples dotted along the Nile welcomed visitors hoping for divine insight. Priests would guide you into ritual slumber, hoping the gods would whisper advice, healing, or stock tips in your sleep. A fringe theory, charmingly disputed, suggests that some headrests may have acted as sleep altars, with sacred oil drops applied to the top, and incense burned beneath to invite holy visions. No hard evidence, but it's the kind of thing you want to believe. You lie still, feeling the cradle of the wood under your neck, the coolness slowly radiating into your skin. It's not soft, but it's steady, dependable, like a tiny wooden bridge between the conscious and the divine. Outside, the moon hangs low, half covered in a haze of papyrus smoke. Somewhere, an ibis shrieks once and goes quiet. And you, propped just a hand span above the earth, float gently into the realms of sleep, trusting your humble pillow to keep your head above dreams. Morning again, or at least something that smells like it. You wake slowly, blinking up at a ceiling of woven reeds. Your new headrest is still beneath you, unwavering and smug, like it knew all along you'd come around. There's a warmth in your neck, not from discomfort, but from the gentle pressure that's somehow welcome now. You stretch, wince a little, and smile. Maybe you're finally going native. Today's task is peculiar, even by ancient Egyptian standards. You've been invited to visit a priest who specializes in dream interpretation and enchanted headrests. You're not entirely sure whether this is a spiritual consult or a product demo, but you're not going to pass it up. You arrive at the temple mid-morning, ducking beneath stone arches etched with faintly fading hieroglyphs. Inside, it's dim, incense heavy, and hushed, the sort of quiet that feels watched. A long corridor leads you past statues of gods with hawk heads and cow ears, until you reach a low room lined with what appear to be pillows. You take a step closer. They're headrests, of course, but these are something else, carved not just with shapes and symbols, but entire stories, scenes of farmers dreaming of bountiful harvests, of crocodiles turning into golden fish, of people flying with falcon wings and landing beside blue lotuses. Your host, a man named Dahuti M. Hotep, you can call him D. He says, welcomes you with a grin and offers tea. He sits cross-legged beside a carved alabaster rest and explains, matter-of-factly, that certain headrests are enchanted to enhance dreams. Not potently, not in a fireworks and oracle kind of way, but gently. Like adding a pinch of mint to your thoughts before bed. Many of these enchanted headrests were inscribed with sleep spells, short lines of protective or visionary invocation. One common example: raise the head to see the hidden path. Another, found in a royal scribe's tomb: let the dream be gentle and the waking clean. Charming, poetic, and vaguely ominous, depending on how you slept. Historians still argue whether these spells were meant to literally alter dreams, or if they were symbolic, rituals of reassurance more than magic. It's hard to say, but given the care with which these objects were carved, it's safe to assume people believed they helped, or at least wanted to. D lifts a particularly worn wooden rest and points to a shallow groove along its underside. This, he says, was where the owner kept a scrap of blessed linen, dipped in lotus oil, for dream purity. You nod sagely. You don't fully know what dream purity is, but it sounds better than dream impurity, which probably involves biting geese. A quirky tidbit from D: some headrests were carved with ears. Literal ones. Big, exaggerated ears sculpted on each side of the head cradle, supposedly to help the gods hear your dreams. Whether this was metaphor or misunderstood magic is unclear, but it's a good reminder that ancient Egypt had no shortage of creativity when it came to making the invisible feel just a little more real. You ask about the use of hieroglyphs directly on the headrest's cradle. surely the part most in contact with the head. Wasn't that risky? Dee chuckles and says, the contact is the point. You press your thoughts directly to the spell. You can't help but picture it. Thousands of sleepers, lying in dark mud brick homes, necks tilted back onto wooden arcs carved with sacred scripts, whispering their fears, their dreams, their prayers into the wood itself. Tonight, you'll try something similar. Maybe not full enchantment, but you do still have that little figure of bees. And perhaps, before sleep, you'll whisper something to him too. Just in case he's listening. The sun sinks again, predictably but no less majestically. Behind the low hills beyond the Nile, shadows lengthen like lazy cats, and the whole city begins its soft nightly unraveling. You walk back from the temple slowly, thinking of dream inscriptions, carved ears, linen dipped in lotus oil, and the soft smirk on Dee's face when he said, some dreams come from your stomach, not the gods. Tonight, however, you're not heading straight to bed. Instead, your host family has invited you to join them on a short walk to the market district, where artisans and merchants gather under canopy tents, even after sundown, to sell everything from barley snacks to amulets shaped like frogs. You've been promised a glimpse of custom headrests for sale. You arrive just as oil lamps flicker to life, illuminating rows of woven mats covered in wares. There are baskets of dates, jars of beer thick as stew, stacks of reed sandals, and, yes, headrests. Piles of them, short ones, tall ones, headrests shaped like animals, fruits, and in one memorable case, what appears to be a goose holding up the head cradle with its wings. This, it turns out, is headrest shopping night. You sidle up to a low stall where a woman is polishing a cedar headrest with beeswax. She nods at you and gestures to her array. Try one, she says, as casually as if she's offering sandals. You kneel and place your neck on one shaped like an open lotus blossom. It smells faintly of cardamom. It's oddly dignified. You ask how long she's been carving these. Since I was 12, she replies. My father carved resting places for the living. My mother carved them for the dead. She pauses, wiping a fleck of wax from the wood. Same shape, just different customers. You try another. This one painted with a swirling pattern that resembles waves or wind. She explains it's meant to invite cool dreams. A clever sales pitch, or ancient marketing strategy? Either way, it's working. Historians still argue whether marketplaces truly functioned as diverse as the art suggests, or if this level of personalized design was rare. But examples recovered from sites across Egypt indicate that people did value aesthetic choice in their sleeping tools. You weren't just buying wood. You were buying dreams, comfort, status, protection. A quirky rumor floats your way from a neighboring stall. That one carver, famous in the Delta region, used to sing to the headrests as he made them, not for spiritual reasons, but because he believed the wood held on to the tune and would pass it into your ears while you slept. No evidence supports this, but admit it, you kind of want to believe it too. And what of children's headrests? You find a few here, smaller and painted in bright, if slightly chipped, colors. One is shaped like a coiled snake, which you think is bold design for a preschooler. Another features carved ducks. You imagine the tiny dreams that might pass over such a surface, muddy ponds. Soft quacking, someone losing a sandal. Before you leave, you purchase a modest one, a simple curve of palm wood. Smooth and undecorated, the vendor ties a bit of blue string around it for good luck. Put it under your neck. Dream about stars, she says. You walk home under a sky now flooded with constellations. No city lights here, just the faint hum of insects, the soft shuffle of feet on dry earth, and the gleam of the Nile in the moonlight. At home, you set your new headrest beside your mat. The old one sits nearby, quietly retired. You whisper a thank you to bees. Settle your neck, and close your eyes. Tonight, maybe you'll dream about a goose reading hieroglyphs, or waves made of cedar, or a song still humming gently inside the wood. You wake before sunrise, not because you have to, but because Egypt gently insists. The room is still cloaked in bluish shadows, the kind that make everything look slightly ancient, even the new. Your head is still perched perfectly on the palm wood arc you bought the night before. And your neck feels functional. You count that as a win. Today, you've been invited to attend a small, informal temple ceremony honoring a lesser-known god named Bees. your bedtime companion and dream guardian. It turns out, Bees doesn't just do night shifts. He also has a minor fan club who gather to sing, dance, and thank him for his offbeat protection. You arrive at a courtyard tucked behind a bakery, convenient, where a dozen or so townsfolk are gathered with tambourines, flutes, and headrests propped up like little altars. They greet you warmly and motion for you to take your place among the cushions. Someone places a daub of scented oil on your forehead and another drops a flower onto your lap like it's a seating chart. The ceremony is surprisingly cheerful. People sing lullaby-like songs to bees, most involve clapping, foot stomping, and one extremely enthusiastic reenactment of a nightmare being chased out of a room by a woman waving a laundry stick. It's all part of the charm. Bees, after all, wasn't your typical god. He didn't demand temples or terrifying offerings. He liked music, laughter, domestic peace. You're shown several headrests made in his image, tiny carved figures of the squat, lion-faced deity holding up the ark with muscular arms, teeth bared in what could be a snarl or a grin. Some have protective spells scratched into the base, mostly about warding off nightmares, insects, or, oddly specific, talkative ghosts. Historians still argue about whether Bees was worshipped widely or only within certain communities. His imagery shows up in both high-status tombs and humble village homes. He wasn't elite, but he was loved, a god of dancers and dreamers, children and small noises in the night. A fringe belief you overhear during a whispered side conversation claims that headrests dedicated to Bees could trap bad dreams, which would then be burned in small mourning ceremonies. You look around the courtyard, half expecting to see smoke curling from a ceremonial pot of collected nightmares. Instead, someone just offers you a fig. Later, an elder named Hetepi invites you to examine her personal collection of lucky headrests. They're not flashy, no gold, no imported ivory, but each one has a story. The rest she used when her son was born. The one she lent to her sister before a long journey. The cracked one she refuses to throw away because it catches the nicest dreams. You hold one carved with tiny stars across the base. This one, she says, is only for moonless nights. You don't ask why. Some things don't need explaining. The gathering winds down with a final chant. Everyone lays a hand on their own headrest and offers a wish, not a prayer, but something softer, a hope, a hush. You follow suit, placing your hand on your palm wood arc, and wish for whatever ancient Egyptians used to wish for: restful sleep, good dreams, a quiet heart, maybe a cool breeze. Walking back through the now bustling street, you notice something you hadn't before. Nearly every home has a headrest visible near the threshold. On stools, beside mats, peeking from under linen covers. It's not decor, it's not fashion, it's tradition, woven into daily life as seamlessly as bread, beads, or baskets. Tonight, when you lie back once more, the curve of your headrest greets you like an old friend. Solid, steady, slightly smirking, and somewhere deep in your dreams, Bees dances with a tambourine the size of a grain silo. The next day brings a small but exciting mission. A scribe named Neferka has invited you to visit his personal study, where he claims to own one of the oldest and most confusing headrests still in use. You're skeptical, but your neck is curious. You walk through narrow alleyways, past a boy selling lukewarm beer and a group of women weaving papyrus mats while humming a tune about crocodiles and taxes. The study is tucked behind a quiet courtyard with a pond full of reed frogs and exactly one very territorial goose. Neferka himself opens the door, eyes lined with kohl, fingers ink-stained, and smile unusually wide for someone awake this early. Come, he says, the mystery awaits. Inside, it's a scribe's paradise, scrolls stacked in corners, clay lamps balanced on teetering shelves, and a headrest sitting boldly in the middle of a reading mat like a throne for a very small pharaoh. This headrest is odd. It's made of dark basalt, which is rare. It has no inscriptions, no decorative carvings, just a single groove running lengthwise along the top. And instead of a smooth, arched cradle, the surface is flat, like someone misread the assignment. It looks more like a brick that wants attention. You raise your eyebrows. Neferka raises his. I know, he says, and yet I sleep on it every night. He invites you to try it. You do. It feels like resting your neck on a chilled loaf of bread. Your vertebrae voice their disagreement immediately. You get used to it. Neferka shrugs. Sipping date wine. Some say this design predates even the Old Kingdom. Others think it was meant for meditation rather than sleep. Historians still argue about headrest placement, not just in the bedroom, but in sleep posture. Did people sleep on their backs with the headrest supporting the skull? Or on their sides with the arc tucked under the neck? Were they ever placed at the shoulders instead? Skeletal studies give mixed answers. Tomb art shows people in different positions, but whether those reflect comfort or symbolism is anyone's guess. One intriguing theory suggests that the upright neck posture kept the spine aligned for spiritual channeling. Another, more cynical view? People just didn't have better options. Neferka gestures to a papyrus scroll rolled half open nearby. This, he says, is a dream journal. My father kept it, wrote down what the headrest whispered to him. You look closer. The entries are dated by lunar phase and contain notes like, dreamt of papyrus fields turning into swimming birds. Or, woke suddenly. Bees standing at foot of mat. Juggling onions. Unclear meaning. You're offered a copy, which you accept with a mix of amusement and low-key reverence. It's not often someone casually hands you 30 years worth of recorded subconscious chaos. Before you leave, Neferka offers one last tidbit. Some headrests, especially in temples, were anointed each night with a drop of perfumed oil, usually blue lotus, frankincense, or even powdered myrrh, not for the sleeper, but for the gods who might pass by during the night. A kind of olfactory offering. You smell good equals you're dreamworthy. A quirky side note? There's a tiny, fading drawing on Neferka's wall showing a man riding a headrest like a horse. You ask. He shrugs. My cousin's child, he says, but maybe also a metaphor. That night, inspired by your visit, you test a new sleep position, on your back. Arms crossed over your chest like a mummy. Head perfectly balanced on your current favorite headrest. It's not comfortable, but it is ceremonial. You fall asleep imagining yourself carved on a tomb wall. Just as you are now, neck elevated. Peaceful, possibly dreaming of onions and floating reeds. The next morning brings a cool breeze, rare, delightful, and possibly a blessing from Shu, god of air. You take it as a sign to wander farther from your usual routes. Exploring the quieter edges of the city where the houses grow smaller and the streets narrower. Your neck feels fine. In fact, your whole posture seems suspiciously improved. Like your spine is finally starting to believe this whole wooden arc as pillow idea. Today's journey leads you to a traveler's lodging house, a rest stop of sorts for merchants, pilgrims, and the occasional cat herder with interesting stories. Your goal? To investigate how the average traveler in ancient Egypt handled sleep, and more specifically, what kind of pillow they brought along for the ride. Inside, the house is shaded and busy. You pass a merchant hauling dried figs, a priest muttering to a donkey, and a woman with an entire basket of clay figurines tied to her back. All are gathered in clusters around mats, resting, eating, or debating the price of garlic. And yes, headrests are everywhere. You quickly learn something curious. Not only did travelers carry headrests with them, but these versions were often collapsible or unusually lightweight. A popular model among traders is the tripod-style headrest, made of 3 flat slats of wood lashed with leather cords. When untied, it folds into a compact triangle. When assembled, it's just tall enough to prop the neck. You try one. It's slightly wobbly and creaks ominously when you move, but it does the job. It's portable dignity. Historians still argue about the ubiquity of headrests in travel. Were they as common as sandals? Or more of a luxury item for higher status wanderers? Some records suggest they were standard for military campaigns. Others show them listed in temple inventories, marked as gifts to journeying scribes. A traveling potter named Noctum greets you with a nod and a story. His headrest, he claims, is made from driftwood pulled from the Nile during a flood season. It's deeply grooved, slightly bent, and bears the burn mark of a lantern left too close during a storm. He's used it for 12 years. Don't trust a mat, he tells you, but trust a good headrest. You ask if he's ever had to sleep without one. He nods solemnly. Once, in a donkey pen, woke up with a frog sleeping on my face. Another traveler shows you her prized possession, a tiny pillow carved to look like a cat. It's my guardian, she says. Also, I like cats. You respect the honesty. A fringe theory floats through the air as a side conversation. That some people believed traveling without a headrest invited wandering spirits into your dreams. Your head was vulnerable when it touched unfamiliar ground. The wooden ark, especially if personalized, acted as an anchor to your true self. Your ka and ba could find their way home more easily. Before you leave, someone hands you a folded piece of linen, embroidered with a sun symbol, to wrap your headrest. She says, keeps the energy clean. Whether spiritual or hygienic, it seems like sound advice. You walk back through sun-warmed streets, head buzzing with stories, neck straight, posture almost noble. You feel like a person who belongs to this world now, a traveler with their own tale, their own headrest, their own place between dust and dreams. That evening, you unwrap your favorite rest, polish its curve, and lay it gently on the mat. You consider wrapping it in the gifted linen, but pause. Somehow, you want your skin to touch the wood. It feels earned. You lie down, head raised, eyes soft, dreams waiting like boats in a fog. And far away, perhaps, someone else balances their neck on a similar arc and wonders the same thing you do. Did anyone really ever find the perfect angle? The heat today is unrelenting. Even the goats seem grumpy. You spend most of the morning sitting under a woven shade awning, sipping sour beer and staring at your now well-worn headrest like it's an old friend who refuses to apologize for being difficult. But this evening, you're attending something different, a gathering of storytellers who share tales about sleep traditions from other regions, traders, travelers, and immigrants who brought their own versions of rest to Egypt's cultural mosaic. You're hoping to hear whether the humble Egyptian headrest ever made it past the Nile. The event is hosted in a cool stone chamber near the riverbank, lit by oil lamps and filled with low cushions, reed mats, and, naturally, dozens of headrests acting as both furniture and conversation starters. The first speaker, a merchant from the Levant, unrolls a scroll showing a wooden rest shaped more like a crescent moon. Ours curved inward, he says, cradled the whole side of the face. Not so high, better for side sleepers. You can hear half the Egyptians in the room quietly gasp. Next comes a visitor from the Nubian south. She shares a headrest carved from bone, wrapped in leather and worn smooth from generations. We don't sleep on them, she says. We sleep with them, like a helper. Hers has a name. She won't tell you what it is. Then a man from the Red Sea coast shows a rest made from woven reeds rather than carved wood, flexible, springy, and surprisingly stylish. The wind whistles through it. He says, best sleep in the world, unless it rains. And finally, an older scholar stands to share a piece of global trivia. Similar headrests existed in places far from Egypt. In Japan, the makora, a wooden or bamboo neck rest, was used for centuries to preserve complex hairstyles. In Ethiopia, neck cradles were handed down through families and considered signs of maturity. In Kenya, pastoralist communities still use portable wooden neck supports, worn smooth with use and tradition. Historians still argue whether these headrests evolved independently or were influenced by Egyptian designs. Was it a case of parallel invention? Or did traders, soldiers, or scribes carry the idea across deserts and mountains, leaving the headrest's curved shadow on foreign shores? A fringe, but charming, theory suggests that certain ancient mariners used headrests not just for sleep but also as sundials. Their arched shape casting telling shadows at dawn and dusk. Not exactly timekeeping precision, but perhaps close enough for breakfast and bedtime. You sit quietly, watching people examine one another's headrests like prized heirlooms. Some swap theirs temporarily, testing the angle. One very bold scribe attempts to nap during the lecture, earning a sandal to the shin. Later that night, you find yourself lying on your mat, head resting on your familiar palm wood arc, neck comfortably stretched, mind filled with stories. You feel connected, across lands, across centuries, through the shared stubbornness of people who chose hard pillows because they meant something. And you realize something beautiful. The legacy of the Egyptian headrest isn't about softness, it's about structure. A carved arc that outlasts empires. A tool for sleep, yes, but also a symbol of preparation, of ritual, of care. Your eyes drift closed, somewhere, halfway across the world, and 3,000 years later, someone else lies on a neck rest shaped nearly the same. Maybe they're dreaming too. The final night comes with little fanfare. The air is soft, the moon full, and your limbs feel heavy in the best way, like they've finally agreed to stop resisting gravity. You've eaten your barley stew, tied back the curtain to let in the breeze, and you've placed your headrest in its familiar spot on the mat. Tonight, though, you pause. You take your time running your fingers along the smooth arc of the wood. You notice the tiny nick on the underside, the place where it caught on the edge of the tooled chest your second day here. You think about the way your neck resisted at first, then adapted, then surrendered. And now, like so many Egyptians before you, you place your head gently onto the cradle. One breath in, one out. This one's going to be the last sleep in this particular place, in this particular body, at least for this story. So you let your mind wander a bit. You imagine yourself drifting into a dream, along a canal lit by torchlight, guided by a ferry made of bound reeds. The oars drip silence into the water. On the banks, you see images, scenes from this journey carved into limestone. A headrest market, bees dancing with a tambourine, that tiny, unreadable frog amulet, Neferka's basalt brick pillow, the pillow merchant who wrapped yours with blue string. The boat glides forward, and you feel lighter. You're not alone. There are others in boats like yours, heads resting gently on wooden arcs, eyes closed, hearts open. You think about what you've learned, not just about ancient furniture, but about intention. Sleep here is more than escape. It's a ritual of continuity, a preparation for both the dream world and the next day. A simple wooden object becomes sacred, just by the way people use it, care for it, believe in it. Historians still argue about the details. Were certain woods better for dreams? Were lion-shaped headrests more protective than lotus ones? Did any of this really help sleep? But maybe that misses the point. The point is that you lie down every night and lift your head just enough to rise above the dirt. Enough to let your breath catch the breeze. Enough to invite a god to visit if they're passing by. And now, your own dreams begin to arrive. Soft-footed and strange. Someone offers you a date wrapped in papyrus. A fish whispers a riddle you already know the answer to. Your head remains lifted, your soul wandering but tethered. Your sleep deep and ancient. And now, listener, as we leave the world of sand and stone, of wooden arcs and starlit rest, allow yourself to sink gently into the quiet. Let your breath slow, let your body soften. You've spent the last while walking through a different time, through warm dust, beside the Nile, surrounded by sleep rituals that were both strange and familiar. You've met a people who saw dreams not as forgettable nonsense, but as sacred maps. You've rested your head where priests, potters, and children once did. You've learned that even the humblest objects, polished wood, a string of blue thread, a painted frog, can hold generations of belief, care, and whispered wishes. Your head, in this moment, is as steady as those who slept thousands of years ago. You are connected by posture, by silence, by that deep, gentle desire to rest well and wake whole. So let go of the noise that doesn't matter. Let go of the to-do lists, the missed calls, the unanswered emails, the mismatched socks. They will all wait for you on the other side of sleep. Right now, let your breathing deepen, your limbs grow heavier, and your thoughts stretch out like the slow current of the Nile beneath the moon. You are safe, you are still, and your neck, oddly enough, is just right. Let the ancient wood carry you. Let the dreams come, let the silence stay. End of script. Sweet dreams.